So this is what we're making, a faceted ring using a hammer and square wire. So I'm going to make an O1/2 ring, and the inside diameter is 17.78 millimeters. The material I'm using is square 2.5 millimeter wire. So we add that, then we multiply by 3.14. Now we're going to hammer this up, so you need to minus 6 millimeters from that total, because as we hammer it, it's going to get bigger. So that means I need to cut my wire 57.67 millimeters long. Now, the end of the wire is damaged, so the first thing we'll do is saw about 3 millimeters off the end, file it flat, measure, saw, file it, anneal, and form it into an oval. So after the wire is cut with the saw, then I just set my digital calipers, hook the end on, drag the other end across, and I have a nice mark to cut to. I'll cut just to the outside of the mark. I'll saw just to the outside of the mark, and then file back to it. And because it is such a fine scratch, I usually put a texture mark where the scratch is so I don't have to search to find it. So we'll just saw that off. And file the ends nice and flat. Check it against the safe edge of your file to make sure it is flat. Do the other end. Cool. Now we need to anneal it before we try to bend it. So we'll just heat this until the metal's a dull red. Turn off the torch, and by then it's cool enough to be quenched in water. So now we'll dry it and use our flat half-round pliers to form it, and the half-round goes on the inside. Don't grab the very end of the metal, let it stick out of the pliers a bit. It's just so you don't damage the end of the material. So we're just going to form this into a nice oval. Line up the ends as perfectly as you can and get the ends down so that they're level. And once you get the ends so that they're level this way, then you can use your ring bending pliers opposite the join. Give it a little squeeze and it'll pull those ends together. Now make sure that your wire isn't twisted. So have a good look at the edges to make sure all of the edges line up. And if the edges line up and it's a good solid join, it's time to solder. So now we'll flex the join, top and bottom. Put a piece of hard solder resting right on the join. And place it with your flex brush because the solder needs to be flexed too. So now we'll just dry out our flex. Make sure the solder stays in position. Heat the ring so that both sides of the join are the same temperature. If you have one side hotter than the other, the solder will jump to that side. So that looks good. And now we'll quench and pickle. Quench in water. So now we'll round it up on the ring mandrel. Look at the end, make sure it's nice and round. Now we'll use a sanding stick with 400 grade wet or dry paper on it to tidy up our solder joins. And if you did a good job, a reasonable job, this should clean up really quickly. Lovely. So now I just slipped it on my ring mandrel and had a look at the size. So it is a J, and we're going to an O plus. So we're just going to take either a planishing hammer or your jeweler's hammer, and we're going to hammer a flat. Just one hit, and then right next to it, another one. So work your way all the way around, and I'm holding the ring against the ring mandrel. So you can see these are nice evenly spaced marks. And you're just going to keep your eye on the ring mandrel because you're going to hammer until you get to your size. So that's our ring that we faceted with a hammer. Now it's just a matter of polishing it. And I'm just going to hold it on a wooden ring stick and polish it on the wheel. So that's it done, and I'm quite happy with the pattern in the edge that came out when we hammered it. So it's one of those lucky accidents. And because we're using square wire, it enabled it to do that.